found a way to land it.
Oh, and you know, you never know. I tried to recruit Gable. I got into trouble recruiting Gable because Blue Ball and I went in to see Gable and his parents at the same time. Well, when I got back home, Bert Smith, the athletic director, said, "Did you do any recruiting?" I said, "Yeah. Doug and I went in to see this high school kid, Dan Gable." "Oh, don't you realize that's a violation? Two coaches from the same school can't go into a kid's home at the same time." I didn't know that was a rule.
Yeah.
He dials the Big Ten right in front of me and turns me in. I get campused for 6 months that I couldn't recruit off campus because of that.
Ah.
The rule's not in effect anymore. And I just wish it hadn't have been then. But the recruiting is a great bugaboo. I mean, sometimes you lose kids and you don't know why you lost them. And they go to different schools. And sometimes you get them and you really don't know why you got them, except maybe somebody turned him down and decided you were maybe second best. But we tried to be honest with everybody and tell them this. I had one standing rule, that you tell me what weight class you're going to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking your word for that. If you tell me you're going to wrestle that weight class, if we have to stay in this gym until midnight, you're going to make weight and wrestle. Now, if the next day you say, "Hey, I can't do this anymore," fine. But make up your mind when you talk to me, because my word's going to be that good to you. If I tell you something, you can take it to the bank. And there's a few times that we had to stay till midnight. And then various individuals decided, "Hey, that was too much. I'll go up a weight." Fine, that's your decision. But you're only as good as your word. And we had a few incidents with that. It was amazing what willpower some people have and what willpower others don't. When I got out of the Navy in August of '46, I weighed 152. The next March, we drove to San Francisco, and I won the National AAU at 115.
Wow.
And nobody made me. This was my own decision.
Right.
And then I pulled to 14 and a half and 48 for the Olympic trials.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, I could turn sideways and they'd count me absent in class. It was not really a smart thing to do, but nobody made me do it. If someone had made me do it, I might have not worked so hard. But
Right.
it was a matter of keeping your word. And it was tough. I won't deny that. It was a living hell. Going to class and wrestling and one meal a day, one glass of water a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just glad it's over with. So that's why I had my rule about making weight. You tell me what you want to wrestle.
Sure.
And I lost Dave, that's at Michigan State now. I lost him to Minnesota because he thought I wanted him to pull to 167. And he went to Minnesota where they told him he could wrestle 77. And so he's assistant here at State now.
Coach
And
Dave Dean.
Dave Dean,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And, but you know, you can't win them all. You just have to try. And I've made a lot of recruiting mistakes of kids that didn't pan out, wouldn't go to class, took a chance on them. Some of them I took a chance on, and it worked out okay. At some of them, I probably should have listened more to their high school counselor than what I did. Sometimes you're guilty of wanting a youngster so bad that you think, well, maybe if he's only got one thumb, if we keep him for a while, he'll grow another one, you know. And that's about the way it is with grades sometimes.
Yes.
The discipline in wrestling is unbelievable. When our practices started every day, I usually got 5 to 6 pounds off of most individuals every day. And the bigger guys would be 8 to 10 pounds every day. And we had a tough wrestling room, and we had tough calisthenics and tougher tryout matches. And we had a rope next door, and everybody went up and down that rope every day without using their legs. No one was allowed to use their legs. and we never touched a weight. But you know, times have changed.
Right.
I mean, it's hard work is hard work. You know, you just vary it, and that's about the way things went. And I just had a wonderful experience at this university. I'd like to do it all again, but not tomorrow.
Coach, you talk about times changing.
Yes.
You're still close to the sport, and you're
Oh,
around,
yeah.
you know, wrestlers, and you're around former wrestlers. What do you think are some of the major differences? Or are wrestlers always wrestlers, and they're still the same? What are
Well,
some differences today from when you
yeah.
were coaching?
Every coach does something different. Every coach runs his practice differently. I never ran my practices like Oklahoma State did, because you know, we killed each other in practice in there. There was so much talent in the room. And you never had to have tough calisthenics. You never had to have things like that, because when you left the wrestling room, you knew it was going to happen again the next day, and so you better not stray. We were all GIs right out of World War II, and my roommate was a P-38 pilot. Jernigan, my opponent, was a waist gunner on a B-25. And Hal Moore, the next weight up, was a sniper in the Marine Corps. And that's the kind of guys that my coach inherited.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, every Saturday night it was tough somewhere with some of those guys, the smoking and the drinking. And still, some of them did that and won national championships. But it was an interesting thing to go to Oklahoma State and be thrown in with all those ex-GIs
Sure.
again, you know. And some of them had been there a year. But Oklahoma State was a takedown, let-up school. Everything we worked on was takedowns. Everything we worked on the bottom was stand-ups. If you weren't on your feet before the sound of that whistle blew out, you might not be on the team next year. And but everybody doesn't grow up under a system like that. We worked on takedowns and takedowns and takedowns and takedowns to where my coach locked the door every day and let no one in. And I tell you, my memory sometimes would fade, and I'd go to him and I'd say, "Coach, I really have to go to the restroom." And he'd unlock the door, and I'd run to my locker, and boy, I'd write all this down in a notebook, you know, because I wanted to keep it. And he'd go through maybe 50 takedowns a day. Gee, many Christmas, how do you, he said, "I don't expect you to remember it. Just pick out something that you like, that you think you can work on." I carried that with me to high school and junior high school, and the fact of operating on pride. A lot of coaches taught their kids that you're less than what you ought to be if you're scared when you walk out on the mat. I don't believe that. If you're not scared, you're either stupid or you don't know what's going to happen when that guy in a striped shirt blows the whistle. And being scared is okay. You just gotta live with it and not let it control you. And oh yeah, every time I went out on the mat, I'd bubbles in your stomach, you know, and
Right.
and you think, well, here it goes again. Here's Oklahoma University on the other side, and I know what he thinks of me. It was a real battle down there between those two schools.
Sure.
And just like Michigan, Michigan State, everybody wants to win, no matter what team you're on. But that's, I didn't have to go through what the present coaches have to go through with the federal rules. The federal rules to me are just absolutely stupid. Now, Tom now has to have his team down to 30. Federal rules, 30 by November 1st.
Right.
Well, Penn State can have 39 February the 1st. You talking about this being equal? Only equal in your school with men and women, not with other schools. And so November the 1st, he has to be down to 30. Well, let's say November the 3rd, 3 of his kids get killed in a car wreck. Now, by federal rule, you're down to 27. You're not allowed to replace them.
Can't bring them on.
I can't imagine anybody in their right mind passing some kind of a law like that. And it really bothers me. And I can understand what goes on with some coaches in other schools. There was one Big Ten coach a few years ago that they had him on 74 allegations, the NCAA. And he kept his job. I'm surprised he kept his job. And he told me, he said, well, he says, I was in Vietnam. He says, don't tell me to go by the rules if the other guys were not going to go by them.
Right.
So, you know, it's a matter of personality sometimes. And I suspect that the pressure that's put on a lot of coaches causes this. We never had to cheat. We never had a superfluous amount of help, but we had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have no idea what the present coaching staff has to fall under now. I assume they go by the national rules, and I assume that they're up to the maximum of what they're supposed to have. But it's a tough world. And the recruiting, I did not enjoy recruiting. That's, boy, there were just times that I was on that airplane and I was just wondering why.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't care that much for recruiting, but the other assistants did it with me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we went together, and we had a lot of wonderful kids that came with us because we were honest with them. That's the main thing, is to don't get a kid here and he find out that you lied to him or something
Right.
like that.
Well, let's talk about some of those kids now. You have mentioned the characters that you competed with. How about some of the ones that you coached? And why don't we break this down by maybe to recall some of them? Why don't we go through the lightweights first, and maybe a couple of guys there, a couple stories about fellas who wrestled in the lightweights for you.
Well, Greg Johnson, of course, who's now deceased. He was the first three-time NCAA champion from any Big Ten school. Don Beam, who's coaching at East Lansing, who was a second in the NCAA, second in the Olympics. Don Beam was as good as anybody, even though he wasn't an NCAA champion.
Mm-hmm.
And Dale Carr, Keith Lawrence, gee whiz, Dale Anderson, and you go right on it. George Radman was probably the strongest wrestler that I ever had. He was tall and lean, and he could unbelievably jump up and grab a pipe and do this.
All the way.
And with the strength of his grip and arms, he was parallel with the ceiling. Try that sometime.
I'd rather not.
With help. And George was fantastic. He was a character. Oh God, was he a character. And I know when we went to the national tournament and we had it won, I didn't know it, thank heavens. George was in the finals. He went over to a water fountain and just stayed over it. Next day at weigh-ins, 5 hours before the match, he was 12 pounds over. And I was furious. I told him, I said, you got 5 hours to lose 12 pounds, get it on. And I said, it's all water and you know how it's going to come off. It's going to come off pretty easy. Well, 5 hours from then, he walked back in there and got on the scale, made it. Went out in the finals that night against Gallego of California and just beat the living tar out of the kids. And George was somebody to do things like that to attract attention.
Mm-hmm.
He'd sit on the bench and read a book or something like that when he was waiting for his turn to wrestle, you know. And he was a real character. He transferred to us from University of Pittsburgh. Rex Perry was the coach there then, and I suppose Rex could tell me some stories if he was still alive. But heavyweights, Victor Middleburg was the toughest heavyweight for stamina that I ever had. Jeff Smith was probably the best heavyweight that we had. Others, Michigan State had a kid named Tim Wooden who died recently. And he was a great heavyweight just before, the year before I got up here. And, Mike Bradley. And I'm trying to recall all of these things. You know, I'm 76 now, and I'm lucky to remember what I had for breakfast. But anyway, we had some great kids. And I'll never forget them because it's like Shelby Wilson, the Olympic champion, told me. He says, don't forget, Coach, we made you great. And, you know, if you recruit enough good kids, they'll make you a great coach. Yeah. And you just got to be fortunate enough to get them. And we got some fantastic athletes that were with us all of those years. And then along toward the end, things died down. A new administration came in. You know, if you're not supported, then you probably can't win championships.
Sure.
And it's just getting tougher all the time. I feel for some of the coaches now because things are not as tough now to qualify for the national tournament as they used to be.
Okay.
When I was coaching here, the kids had to place 1, 2, 3 in the Big Ten tournament
Wow. Okay.
to go to the nationals, or then they threw in 4 or 5 wild cards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you can place 7th
Right.
and go to the nationals.
Yeah.
I'm not against it. I'm just telling them how lucky they are.
Sure.
And I think that's a fantastic thing, that the more kids you can get in there, the better off you are for the sport. And the better the schools are for finally sending somebody that, even though he placed only 7th or 6th or something like that, he at least qualified to go to the national tournament. So that's what the coaches are fighting now. And they have a tremendous thing with recruiting and quotas of kids that they can have in their room. I started the season every year with at least 60 kids in the room. I never cut unless somebody skipped or they got caught smoking or drinking. That was instant death. No second chance. Your first chance is when you were told. Second chance is when you got caught.
Now, was this between a certain time of the year in season, or was this, okay, from like November 1st to?
Right.
Okay.
Right, because you know, some kids swing from every vine in town. Watch the news, you know, when we win a ball game. It looks like every ape in town is out there. But wrestlers generally don't get in that much trouble. And most of them are just pretty quiet, introverts. And I really wouldn't take that back for the world. And I'm trying to recall any other fantastic kids that we had, Abba Jay-Z and Mike Ellis, and there was a Conrad Callender that came up with the Melkoviches that placed in the tournaments. And